Good morning, everyone. Welcome to another installment of OLC4O. Today is November 29th, 2022. I'm your instructor, Mike Laverty, and this is class number 10. We are still on Unit 1, and we're working our way through Lesson 3, and I'm hoping today we can cover assignments 11 through 13. And just for the sake of time, just to stress that we are on week 3. We are cruising towards that 2-week Christmas holiday break. Our last day of classes is about 2 months away, January 26th. There are several ways you can watch and listen to this class live. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you can pause the screen and have a look at all those ways you can join us live from 10 a.m. to 10:55 a.m. Central Standard Time. And of course, I'm seeing lots of traffic on the YouTube channel, so people are finding the Laverty Wassa YouTube channel, which is great. So keep watching that, keep sharing it. Tell your fellow students if they don't know about it. So I'm glad to see a lot of views happening there. Again, if you want to pause that screen, have a look. There are multiple ways you can submit your work to myself or other instructors or to your local learning center, DEC. So there's lots of ways you can do that. 3 ways to get in touch with me. Email me, mlaverty@nnecschools.org. Find me on Facebook, add me as a friend, or just send me a message on Messenger. Phone me in the office at the Sioux Lookout number. Ask for Mike if you get the receptionist. Or call our toll-free long-distance number. Find me in my office Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. Give me a call, leave me a voicemail. I will get back to you as soon as I can. And here's where you should be right now. So definitely make contact if you haven't done that already. That's myself, any other Wassa teacher you have. You should have read the first 35 pages of our textbook. Our Unit 1 package. And you should be reading pages 36 through 46. That's all of Lesson 3. And you should have completed assignments 1 through 9 and should start working on assignments 10 through 13. So we're going to do our word of the day. We're going to look at our ellipsis points, which are, of course, the ... We have today's headline. We have our grammar lesson of the day. We're going to be looking at phrases and clauses. What's the difference? And we'll be looking at assignments 12, 13, and we'll also be looking at 11 as well, because we didn't really finish talking about assignment 11 yesterday, so I want to come back to that. So our learning goals are to learn about the proper use of ellipsis points. There it is, the 3 dots. Learn the difference between a phrase and a clause. And we're going to review the writing process to plan out assignments 12 and 13. And you'll know you're successful if you learn how to use these ellipsis points correctly, if you can write phrases and clauses correctly, and if you can complete assignments 12 and 13 by using that writing process. You will have found success in this lesson, which will lead to success in the course as a whole. So hope everybody's doing well out there. Hopefully you're completing the assignments, and I know it's not easy sometimes, and it is hard to get started, and as the days get dark and cold, sometimes it's hard to focus on schoolwork, but if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. If you want to submit anything to me, if all you have is like a sentence, a paragraph, send it my way. Let's have a conversation. Sometimes that's all you need just to get started. Someone just to encourage you, get you on the right track. So reach out to me. We'll walk through the assignments. I guarantee you'll feel better about it. So you got to find little successes if you want to build up to the big ones. So here's our words of the day. So I've got our Wassa logo. I've got a nice broadcast tower. And I've got Wawate News up at the top here. And that leads me to my word of the day. And in this Nabemoan, we have bidajimo, which is a verb, which means he or she brings the news. The English equivalent would be to broadcast. not an exact translation, but a synonym, right? A similar word. So to transmit programs from a radio or television station, or to speak, perform, sponsor, or present on a radio or television program, just like WAS has been doing for decades, right? Broadcasting quality education to northern communities. So I also want to introduce a new word, neologism, which literally means a new word. So it's a newly coined. So when we coin a new word, that means, you know, when you coin a word, you create it, you put it into the language. So neo or neos is a Greek word that means young, fresh, or recent. If you've seen the Matrix movies, Keanu Reeves' character is Neo, right? And then later he becomes the One, which is like a scrambling of that word. But at the start of the movie, he's new, he's young, he's fresh. He doesn't know about the Matrix, right? So it's a very appropriate name. So Neo or Neos means new. Logos is a Greek word that means word, reason, or plan. And that's where we get the word logic from, right? So if things are logical, they are planned out, they have reason, they're orderly, right? And then the ism, you'll see this ism prefix in a lot of English words. It just simply means a specific practice, a system, a belief system, a philosophy. So, you know, like communism, socialism, things like that, of that nature. Anything with an ism is basically, you know, fascism, words like that, like political words, they have that ism on the end of them. On the end of them. Altruism, may have heard that word. It means caring for others. Ultra literally means others, right? So it's the practice of others, right? So it's the philosophy of other people. Pacifism means practicing nonviolence. Pacific means peaceful. The Pacific Ocean is literally the peaceful ocean, but it's a weird name because the Pacific is one of the most violent and storm filled oceans, so it's kind of funny, but literally it means the peaceful ocean. And narcissism, that's when you're self-obsessed. So if someone is narcissistic, or we call them a narcissist, they are obsessed with themselves, which of course comes from a Greek character, Narcissus, who drowned looking at his own reflection, trying to get his own reflection, right? So he was so self-obsessed that led to his own death, right? So that's where some of these words come from. So these words are what we call portmanteaus, which is a word that blends the sounds, the meaning of two words that or others, and they come together. So a really good example of this is a podcast, right? So people have been broadcasting for decades, right? We've been broadcasting since, like, on the radio almost 100 years now. So the word podcast is actually a portmanteau of the words iPod and broadcast. You bring them together, you get podcast. So a portmanteau is when the words get blended. So it's not like the words stay together and you push them together. The words sort of like get fused together. And parts of one word get used and parts of the other word get used. Breakfast and lunch becomes brunch, right? We take the BR from breakfast and we take the UNCH from lunch, we get brunch. And a portmanteau is literally this big closet thing you see right here, right? It's two big pieces. Port means to carry, manteau means cloak. So it literally means to carry your cloak around, right? So this is a little bit of word history, which I love, right? If we look at the Anishinaabemowin language, we have Mazinaigan. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I do my best. That's a book, a letter, a document, a paper. Baba Majimo, he or she spreads the news about. You combine these two words, Baba Majimo Mazinagan, you get a newspaper, right? So a lot of new words, a lot of neologisms are when we already have two concepts and we just kind of smush them together and they become a new word. All right, on to our punctuation of the day, the ellipsis point. So you've probably seen this, the dot dot dot. When you're sending somebody a text, or you're on Facebook Messenger and they're typing a message or they're texting a message, you see that dot dot dot. And what does that dot 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 tell us? Sometimes they kind of jiggle up and down. That tells us there's more to come, right? So that's one meaning of an ellipsis. The most commonly used purpose for the ellipsis is when we're quoting somebody else and when a word has been taken out of a quotation, right? So that's the most common use. But they're also used to show when a writer trails off, when they stutter, or when they leave the reader in suspense. So when you're texting with someone and you see that dot 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 and you're really excited or you really want to know what they're going to say next, and then you get nothing, right? You're kind of left in suspense. But the dot 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 is like there's more to come, or there's more stuff, but we left it out. So ellipsis is from the Greek, ancient Greek, for leave out. That's what it literally means. The plural form is ellipsis. So one of my favorite writers is Natalie, whoops, I got her name wrong. She's not Goldman. She is Goldberg. Natalie Goldberg. Love her writing. So she's got a great book called Writing Down the Bones, Freeing the Writer Within. So this is an excerpt. So an excerpt is a short passage from a book, a play, a short story. It reads as follows. We must continue to work the compost pile, enriching it and making it fertile so that something beautiful may bloom, and so that our writing muscles are in good shape to ride the universe when it moves through us. I love that quote. It's beautiful. And she's saying that if you want to be a writer, you have to put the work in. You have to generate your ideas. You got to work that compost pile, right? And then you have to put the rough and the dirty work in so that something beautiful can come out of it. And then she's saying you have to ride the universe when the universe moves through you, right? So you can't just sit there and wait for inspiration. You got to put the work in. And then when the time is right, you're ready for it because you've put the work in. Your soil is ready to go. You've put the soil in. You've watered your plants. You've made the conditions right, and now it's time to grow something. So I love that quote. Now, if I'm going to quote that essay, if I'm going to quote that in an essay, so let's say I'm taking a creative writing program, and I've got to pick a writer to talk about, and I choose Natalie Goldberg. Here's how I'd write that in my essay. In her popular book, comma, that's an introductory phrase, right? The comma goes after it. In her popular book, Writing Down the Bones, which is in italics, right? We italicize longer words. Natalie Goldberg offers new writers excellent advice on generating ideas. And I've used our friend the colon to set up a quotation. And I start my quotation with my double quotation mark. We must continue to work the compost pile. Now here's my ellipsis points right here, okay? I put a space after the word pile and a space before the word soap, so that something beautiful may bloom. Page 15. So notice that this indicates to the reader that words have been omitted. They've been cut from the original quotation. Really, really important point here. Hopefully this was done without changing the author's meaning. So you tell me, did I change her meaning when I cut those words out? Because you can take some, just by cutting out 10 words or even a single word, you can really change the meaning of what someone is saying. So you got to be careful not to do that. So I'm hoping that I preserved what she said. I'm trying to shorten the quotation, but that's why we use the ellipsis point. We also use the ellipsis point to show where the speaker is trailing off, setting up suspense, or showing where someone is stuttering or having a hard time speaking. Usually seen in fiction, right? So if I write a novel about this guy, Mr. Lance, and my first sentence goes, on his first day of teaching grade 1, Mr. Lance cleared his throat and spoke to his class. I hope we all have a good day, right? So I'm trying to show that he's stuttering or he's nervous, and that's why I'm using those dot, dot, dots. I'm using my ellipsis points. After all this family has been through, they may have more to endure. dot, dot, dot. So maybe I'm writing a story about a family who's been through a lot, maybe been through some tragedies. Either I'm writing about a real family or I'm writing about a fictional family. That dot, dot, dot is sort of like there's more to come, right? And then we use the ellipsis in like more informal writing and sending a text. So if I texted someone and said, I waited for you in the parking lot for almost an hour, dot, 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 that dot, dot, dot is like, I have more to say. You know, this speaks a lot, right? What is that saying? That's saying I'm angry. You know, if you see that dot, dot, dot in a text message, it's like the person has more to say. They're just not saying it, right? It's like, it sort of shows you how they're feeling, right? So that's how we use that in the language, okay? So here's today's headline. 10-year-old Mississauga boy is the top chess player in the world for his age category. So there he is. There's our friend the hyphen, right, that we talked about yesterday. When we use numbers in combination with words, we usually put hyphens, right? So 10-year-old. And there's the dash. So there's a dash and a hyphen used in a real headline. Let's break that down. So 10-year-old, adjectives are in orange, nouns are in blue, verbs are in green, articles are in white, prepositions are in red. So the subject of our sentence is a Mississauga boy. That's a noun phrase. Mississauga boy combined, right? But he's not just any Mississauga boy. He's a 10-year-old, right? So the adjective modifies 10-year-old. Is the verb. The is an article. Remember, articles are the, a, and an. There's only 3 of them. So anytime they're used, that's an article. He's a chess player, but he's not just a chess player. He is the top chess player. But not the top chess player in the world. He's the top chess player he is the top chess player in the world for his age category, right? So for is that sets up this phrase, right? For his age category, right? His stands in place for Aaron Mendes or the 11-year-old chess prodigy. And it's not just a category. It's an age category, right? So adjectives are paired with nouns. Pronouns always refer back to an original noun. So in this case, his is referring back to Mississauga boy. So instead of saying for the 10-year-old Mississauga's boy, we just say the word his. That's why we use pronouns to replace other words. Okay. Doing good for time here. So we're talking about this is today's grammar lesson, right? So I wanna do this once every class. We talk about the language and we try to break it down on a technical level. So a phrase. So we're talking about phrases and we're talking about clauses. So when we build sentences from clauses, but we also build them from phrases, okay? So a phrase is a group of 2 or more words that does not have a subject and a verb. It may have neither, okay? So it might have a subject, it might have a verb, doesn't have both, okay? So for something to be a clause, it needs a subject and a verb, okay? Those are the key ingredients. A complete sentence has to have a subject. It has to have a verb, okay? A group of words without a subject and a verb is a phrase. It may contain one, but not both. A clause is a group of words with a subject and a verb. You can build a sentence with one clause, okay? That's the most basic requirement we can do. You cannot build a sentence with one phrase. So a phrase cannot be a sentence. It cannot be a sentence on its own. If it is, we call it a sentence fragment or we call it an incomplete sentence. sentences can be written with a combination of clauses and phrases. So you can mix the two to make a sentence. And that's really what writing is. When you're writing a sentence, you are combining clauses and phrases, and that's why you need to know the rules of grammar. You need to learn the parts of speech, and you need to learn punctuation, right? So it's those three things combined that allow you to understand the mechanics of writing. Because, writing is an art form, but as I've mentioned in this class a few times, writing is very mechanical in a way that we do have a certain set of rules that you have to follow. And so you have to learn the pieces and how you fit them together. So conjunctions go with commas, right? We can fuse independent clauses together. We can attach a dependent clause to an independent clause, right? So we can take multiple phrases and create a clause. So it's, you're building things. You build a word from letters. You build a phrase from words. It all sort of flows together, right? So at the very top, so we're going from the top down, right? So we use letters to make words. We use words to make phrases. We use phrases to make clauses. Clauses make sentences. Sentences make paragraphs. And paragraphs make essays, stories, novels, etc. So we could take a metaphor from the science world and say, atoms, subatomic particles like electrons and protons and neutrons, those make up atoms, and those atoms make up molecules, and those molecules make up, organic matter, like proteins and fats and blood and stuff like that. And that organic matter makes up animals, and animals exist in an ecosystem, and many ecosystems make a biome, and many biomes make a planet, and many planets make a solar system, and many solar systems make a galaxy. So it all sort of like builds up in complexity, but it's little tiny building blocks that come together to make something bigger, and then those bigger pieces come together to make something bigger, right? So, and that's why, like when you're in kindergarten and when you're in grade 1 and 2, you learn your letters and you learn your words. And then as you get older, you start to become masters of the big pieces, right? But it's not like you just master words and you're done with words, right? You're always learning new words, and you're always learning about sentences, but that's how the language is built. So here's some examples, okay? So everything on the left is a phrase. So on the way to Winnipeg, there's no subject, okay? There's no verb. So there's no person, place, or thing. There's Winnipeg, but it's not really a subject, right? So on the way to Winnipeg, there's no subject, there's no verb. In the black dress. Okay, so there is a verb. In. But who's in the black dress? We don't know. So that's not a clause. So it's $15. $15 could be a subject of a sentence, but there's no verb. Who has $15? Has someone lost $15? We don't know. Same with 3 boys. That is a noun phrase. There's no action there. With white stripes and orange, with white and orange stripes. With white and that should say with white and orange stripes, okay? My new phone. My new phone is a noun phrase. There's no action there, okay? Who live by the lake, right? There's a verb there, but who are we talking about? So those are phrases. And on this side we have clauses, okay? So we saw 10 deer. That is a complete sentence. We is the subject. The verb is saw. The predicate is saw 10 deer. I could not concentrate. So these two are independent clauses. These are full sentences on their own. If you win the lottery, it's not a complete sentence, but it is a clause. When she was sick, that's not a full sentence, but it is a clause. Subject, she, verb, was sick. I bought something in the city. That's a complete sentence. My wife is over there. That's a complete sentence. We got a new cat. That's a complete sentence, right? We got a new cat with orange and white stripes, right? I can combine these two to make a sentence, right? I can combine a clause and a phrase, okay? I bought something new in this new city. My new phone, right? I can combine them to make sentences, okay? We saw 10 deer on the way to Winnipeg. Or, on the way to Winnipeg, we saw 10 deer. We can combine the two. So hopefully that makes sense, okay? There's 4 types of sentences, okay? There's simple, compound, complex, and compound complex. So you don't need to worry about this too much, but it's important to understand this stuff. So a simple one is an independent clause with no conjunction or dependent clause. So we saw 10 deer. That's an independent clause, subject, verb, no conjunctions, no dependent clauses. That's a simple sentence. Subject, verb, object. The subject is we. The verb is we saw. The object is 10 deer. That's about as basic as a sentence gets in English. Subject, verb, object, right? We saw 10 deer. Compound is when you combine 2 independent clauses and they're joined by a conjunction. So our family drove to Winnipeg on the weekend. That's a complete sentence. We saw 10 deer along the way. That's a complete sentence. But we've joined them by a conjunction, right? We've joined them with that conjunction right there, the word and. That's a compound sentence. A complex sentence is an independent clause and at least one dependent clause. When she was sick, so remember that's a clause, but it's a dependent clause. I could not concentrate. That's an independent clause, right? So I could not concentrate is the main idea, and then when she was sick explains why I couldn't concentrate. And then the last variety is the compound complex. That's multiple, more than two or more independent clauses and one dependent clause. So when we visited Peru, that's a dependent clause, right? Our family went to Machu Picchu. That's an independent clause. My daughter was too sick to come with us. That's another independent clause. Joined by this conjunction, the word but, okay? So you can see how you can make a really simple sentence, or you can make a compound one, or you can make a complex one, or the most complicated, the compound complex. So the compound complex is obviously the hardest one to write because there's more rules to memorize, right? But as you see, it's not that hard to do once you learn the rules, okay? So this just wanted to give you a little illustration of how we create sentences, and that's really the craft of writing is learning how to build a sentence. And you build a sentence by picking the right pieces and putting them together. And language building is a lot like building like Legos and kits. None of us just invent language off the top of our head, right? We're always borrowing stuff from things that we've heard other people say. We borrow from books that we've read. We borrow from Facebook posts we've read, from text messages we read, from the way people talk on TV. We borrow from the way our families talk. One of the teachers I had, he liked to talk about remixing and how language use is a lot like a remix, right? You listen to a bunch of music and then you take little bits of pieces and you remix them, right? So you take this phrase, you take that clause, you take, oh, I like the way that person said this, and you take it and then you combine it with your own stuff. And that's how we speak. That's how we write. That's how we communicate. We take from others and we change the wording a little bit, right? And we remix it and we do it for our purposes. And that's how musicians write. That's how writers write. That's what we do, right? So on to Unit 1, that should be Lesson 3, not Lesson 2. Assignment 11, the news report. So yesterday, we talked about the purpose. Purpose is really important. When you're writing, you need to write with a purpose. Are you persuading, informing, or entertaining? Who is the audience for the news report? And what is the most important information being conveyed to the reader? Remember the inverted pyramid, right? Where we get most important information. This is like kind of like second information, and this is like the third most. I'm going to call this the info importance, right? I give you my most important information first, then my second, and then my third. So this is the stuff that's nice to know. So nice to know and need to know. Which is a really important concept in a lot of fields in life, a lot of workplaces, a lot of life is kind of like that. What do I need to know, and what is nice to know? If I'm working on a snow machine, if I'm operating a piece of equipment, if I'm building a piece of furniture, if I'm signing a landlord agreement for the first time, if I'm renting my first apartment, if I'm buying my first house, what do I need to know? What's the most critical stuff? And then what's the secondary and like side stuff? You know, if I have time, right? But so that's what we're talking about. And the most important stuff is the 5 W's: who, what, when, where, why, and how. Okay? So that's when we're talking about an article, we got to answer these 3 questions, okay? I want us to look at 3 headlines really quick here and just talk about some of those concepts, okay? So just glancing at the headline. These are some real headlines I pulled from the Globe and Mail, okay? So Canada Jetlines, the latest airline to enter the crowded field, lands its inaugural flight, okay? So that's my headline, and that's my picture, okay? So what is the purpose of this article? Is this to persuade? Is it to inform? Is it to entertain? And I would argue that's probably to inform. It's probably to tell us about this new jet line, Canada Jetlines. It might be to entertain, but remember, we're talking about the primary purpose of the article. Ontario hospitals can begin moving patients to nursing homes not of their choosing. So we've got a picture, and the caption reads, "A paramedic tends to a patient in a hallway at the Humber River Hospital in Toronto on January 25th, 2022. So these articles that I've been showing you, these are from the Globe and Mail. They are news articles. They are meant to inform, right? So a news article is more often than not, its primary purpose is to inform you of something. If you like the news and if you like learning new things, then you're going to be entertained. But the number one purpose is to inform you, is to give you information, right? If somebody is writing about the COVID-19 pandemic and they're saying that like the government's way of doing things is hurting the people and it's making life really miserable for people, that's an opinion piece. And that primary purpose is to persuade, right? And I think that news companies and media companies get in trouble when they forget that their number one duty is to inform us, to give us information. Their number one duty is not to persuade us and to make us think a certain way, right? So And again, another article in Huntington Beach, a local surfer is making the waves more accessible, right? So we've got a story about a young surfer. So people with mobility concerns, right? So trying to make a beach more accessible, right? So again, we're giving the public information, and we're getting the who. So the who would be the who is a local surfer. The what is helping those in wheelchairs. That'd be the what. Where is it happening? Happening in Huntington Beach. So we have who, we have what, we have where, we have okay, when, right? That's my when. And then the why. They don't really say the why, but as a reader, you can infer it. If people are making something more accessible and they're making it easier for people with disabilities to use it, the why is going to be, I would say, accessibility concerns, right? Or more specifically, to address. To address or fix accessibility issues. So I have my who, where, what, why, and when, and my why. And then we have how. How are they doing that? They are installing the first mobile mat, this little mat that this gentleman on the wheelchair is using, right? So how and why are very connected, right? So how, why, and what too, right? They're all connected, right? So so the problem is helping those in wheelchairs. How do we do that? We install the mobile mat. Why are we doing that? Because there's accessibility issues, right? Who is doing that? A local surfer. Where are they doing it? Huntington Beach. When are they doing it? May 2021. This is an article from the Chronicle Journal that was published. Well, it wasn't published last week, but it was published. Let's say last September. So we have donation gives skate park and needed lumber. Okay, so that's what happened. A donation was given. Who's involved? We'll find out as we read it. So that's our headline. The headline is the title of the article. It's written in the big font at the start. My byline is who wrote it. In this case, Jody Lundmark. I've got a date on it. All right. And then I got my lead paragraph. Okay, and I got my so this is my photo. This is my caption. Okay, so I got my photo. I got my caption. And this is my lead paragraph right here, okay? Lead paragraph is my first one. The Female Border Collective's indoor skate park is inching closer to completion with a lumber donation from Resolute Forest Products on Wednesday. So my lead paragraph answers my when question. It's answering my who, right? I've got this Female Border Collective. I've got Resolute Forest Products. It's giving me my what, right? Indoor skateboard is like my what. That's what's happening. So who, what, and then why. And so the why question has not really been answered here. I think the why question is sort of coming down here. And answering a why question is a lot easier once you've established the first, who, what, where, and we know where, and then where is kind of coming in down here too, right? But once I know what's happening, once I know who's involved, once I know what they're doing, then I can understand why they're doing it. But who, what, and where, and when, those are the first kind of four you answer. And then the why sort of comes later. The why and the how comes after, right? So the most basic details are who's involved, where are they, when is it happening. Once you establish those three, then you can talk about how they're doing it and why they're doing it. Those are like arguably the more important questions, but they can't be answered until we figure out a basic kind of story, right? So, and then the article kind of goes from there, and it kind of goes down in importance, right? So, so what you need to know the most important part of the story, and then this is where the quotes come in, right? We quote people from the area, the people from the organization, right? So we have the donor, the Resolute Forest Company, and we have this female border collective, right? So it's nice to hear from the forest company. It's nice to hear from somebody involved who's building the skate park. Now, for your assignment, you're being asked to look at an article. Powwow Idol includes Nova Scotia and Ontario finalists. So that's my headline. This is my photo. This is my lead article. So a lot of newspaper articles will just put the date right here. They don't say on August 4th, 2019. They just say August 4th, 2019. And this is usually the date of publication, right? That's when the story was published. Two Canadian contenders are among the finalists in Powwow Idol, an online competition to find the best unsigned First Nations drum group in North America. The competition is into its 9th round, and a tribe called Mi'kmaq of Millbrook, Nova Scotia, and the Chippewa Travelers of South Central Ontario are still in the running. Okay? So we establish who's involved. We establish what they're doing. We establish where. So sometimes where can be online, right? Can also be where somebody is from, but so we know who's involved, we know what they're doing, they know where they're doing it, and we know when they're doing it, right? And then we're going to learn about how they did it and maybe why they're doing it, okay? And that's what kind of comes after, right? So this is my lead paragraph. So they're competing, and then if you just read the article, you'll get that information, right? So, and then you'll ask yourself, you'll go way back to the question. You'll say, are they trying to persuade me? Are they trying to make me think a certain way about this competition, or are they just trying to tell me about the competition, or are they trying to make me laugh or feel sad? Are they trying to entertain me? And they may be trying to do all three, but remember, it's the primary one. What's the primary purpose of this article, right? So let's actually let's jump back and have a look at that, right? So what are you being asked to do for assignment 11? You are being asked to tell us the purpose and explain your answer. Very important. Don't just say if it's persuasion, information, or entertainment. Explain your answer. Who do you think the audience is for this news report? Now, be as specific as you can, okay? Be specific. Who is the audience? And the audience is tied in with the purpose, right? So, right, if a persuasion piece, if you're trying to convince someone of something, it's got a very specific kind of angle to it. So who's the intended audience? And, and then think about ages and area and interest, things like that, right? So just write about who you think would be the intended audience for that article. and then using the reports, answer those 5 W's. Who is involved in the story? What are they doing? When are they doing it? Where are they doing it? And then go to the 2 harder questions. Why are they doing it? And how are they doing it? Okay, so apply that lesson, and I'm sure you will figure that assignment out using that method, okay? All right, and then we're going to get into some writing, okay? So for assignment 12, you're going to choose a topic for your news report. And for this assignment, you're going to use any of the events you thought were newsworthy in chapter 1 of Jimmy Comes Home. You will have to make up some details, but you should use any information provided by the novel to come up with your answers to we're talking about the 5 W's here. Who, what, where, why, how, and when, and how. And your topic will become your headline. You can use juvenile offender back in town, so you can use that as your headline, or you can make a new one, okay? As your headline, or choose something else. 2 marks, okay? So if we look at chapter 1 of Jimmy Comes Home, we can do the suggested headline of juvenile offender comes home. We can also, what is newsworthy about that story, right? We can say, so we can talk about Jimmy coming home, because that's what he's doing in this chapter. We can talk about the you might want to talk about the you could put it from the perspective of the RCMP officers. RCMP officers, escort juvenile offender, which is similar, right? But we're telling it from the officers. Back to Green Star Lake. We could do, Jimmy reunites with old friends. That could be a headline, right? So you could do something like that, because not really much happens here besides those 2. And then maybe the only ones we could do is, Martha. That's Jimmy's grandmother. You could, Martha welcomes grandson home. So there's 3 headlines, right? So you've got to write a headline. Once you've got your headline, then you can start filling in the blanks, okay, of the who, what, where, why, and how. So part 2, often have photos to visually show the event being reported on. Draw a picture or locate a photo or other graphic in a magazine or newspaper or from the internet that would appear with your news report, okay? So that's very simple. Give me your photo, right? Give me Jimmy's house, where grandma lives. We could do Jimmy talking to Gary, making their plans, right? Something like that, right? So that's pretty simple. Anything really goes here, right? So you don't have to be an artist, as I'm clearly not, right? But just illustrate something, give me a photograph, something that captures the reader's attention and speaks to your story, right? So if you're talking about the RCMP, give me an RCMP officer. If you're talking about Jimmy, draw Jimmy, or find a picture online that could represent Jimmy. If we're talking about Jimmy and Gary, show me both of them. If we're talking about Martha, maybe find a picture online, or if you're good enough, draw Martha, draw Jimmy's grandma. So show me the headline, show me the photograph. Part 3, figure out which details you want to include. Remember, you may have to make up some of the details. Your report will have at least one quotation from someone in the story, and quotation marks will be used to identify it or them. For example, Jimmy's grandma commented, that should be a capital G. I'm so happy that you're home again, Jimmy. Okay? So that's part 3. So then you're putting in the details, right? And this is where you can make up some details, okay? So you could have fun with this one. And like, say, for example, you're going to write about Martha. You can go into her backstory, okay? And you can explain, how she came to be looking after Jimmy. Like, has she always cared for Jimmy? And don't worry if you haven't read the other chapters, because we do delve into her backstory a bit, but at this point you can just make up details. It's not about being accurate to the story, it's about writing a news report. Then you're going to write a rough draft of your news report. It must be 1 page in length, handwritten. Do not worry about the fine details, spelling, grammar, punctuation. Right now you're just working on a rough draft. So, and then work on that inverted pyramid structure. And you should be looking at around, 100 to like 200, 250 words, okay, for this kind of an assignment, okay? For your rough draft, okay? That's how long it should be. And then we have a checklist that you have to do for this assignment. So you need a headline. That's your topic sentence, right? You need a headline. You need a date, right? So you got to check this off, right? Okay, I've written a headline. I have put a date on my article. Okay, this is for your rough draft. Okay, have I demonstrated how the events happen, right? Have I used a quote, at least one that's thoughtful and appropriate to the story? Have I included the level of detail that demonstrates considerable understanding of the event? So you need lots, and this is where we need specific details, okay? So if you look at your Unit 1, Lesson 3, Assignment 12, they give you the news report. So use the news report as a template, right? And then maybe during tomorrow's class we can talk about what it means to use a template and to take something that's already written and then just punch in our own information, which is what a lot of writers do, right? So use it as a template, right? So it'll have a headline, right? So you just take the headline, put your own in, right? So yeah, we won't have time to delve into that today because we got to wrap things up. But when we come back tomorrow, we'll look at Assignment 12, and we'll look at that template from the textbook, from Unit 1, Lesson 3, and we'll look at how do I take this textbook and how do I produce a rough draft based on that template. So we'll revisit that tomorrow, and thanks for tuning in today.